All right, hi everybody. Running a little bit late. I apologize. I had to get my son home from basketball practice. So we're going to continue the live stream from the other night with Chapter 7, The Gatestone. In the morning, I woke up later than I would have on a school day. My room seemed too bright. The wooden floor was colder than it had been the day before. Bursty had slept on the floor at the foot of my bed. He walked over to me and nudged me toward the door with his soft nose. He was much hairier and larger than I'd realized the night before, and in daylight he seemed very strange. He appeared to be made of solid gold, but moved like he was made of flesh and bone. He was about 5 feet long, which is how tall I was. At his shoulder, he was around 3 feet tall. He had 2 large sets of tusks, one coming up from his lower teeth, and one curling outward and upward from his upper set. He was surprisingly graceful and gentle for such a bulky animal. When he walked, his hairy tail swished from side to side like a calm dog's does. I let my hand fall naturally into the fur on Bursty's snout. It felt just like regular animal hair, despite being solid gold. I rubbed Bursty's head as I stood at the window, enjoying his company and, even more, the view. Snow was everywhere. This was not a light dusting like they get down in the lower elevations of the Carolinas and Tennessee. It wasn't the foot or so of snow that we get in the mountains sometimes either. This was Greenland snow, Finland snow, Alaska snow. The snow must have been at least 3 feet deep, maybe 4. It practically reached the bottom of my bedroom window. Our yard was unrecognizable. The car and the big bushes beside the driveway looked like huge white mounds. I looked at Bursty and said, "Snow!" I ran into the hallway and banged on Joe's door. Bursty came along. "Joe, snow! It must have snowed all night. Look!" Joe flew from her room. She was ecstatic. She said, "Can you believe it? This is awesome. I've never seen so much snow in my life." "I bet no one here has," I said. "This has got to be some kind of record." She said, "You've probably seen this much snow, haven't you, Bursty?" He snorted agreeably and wagged his tail. She stepped into the hallway and flipped the light switch on the wall across from her bedroom. Nothing happened. The snow had knocked out the power. "Uh-oh," I said. "That means no heat." Joe said, "I don't know. It's awfully warm in here for no heat." The house was warm because a fire blazed in the fireplace. Jack was sitting on an armchair, reading an old hardcover book and drinking a cup of coffee. He was smoking a pipe, blowing the sweet-smelling smoke into the chimney, where it joined with the smoke from the blazing log and drifted into the icy air outside. "Good morning," he said. "Unless I'm very much mistaken, your aunt would like to know that you are awake so that she might prepare your breakfast. Then perhaps we begin our studies." "Our studies?" I said. Somehow I'd forgotten hearing about that the night before. "That's correct. I am going to teach you about the gods and how the various worlds fit together." He smiled and said, "You needn't look so worried, Stephen. We are not going to spend the entire day huddled over a book, though I would like that very much and plan to do so myself. You will have plenty of time to explore the snow." "I'm not complaining," said Joe, "but why do we need to learn about how the worlds fit together?" "Your aunt and I decided, and the rest of the council agreed, that you would do well to know certain things about Midgard, the high north, gods, giants, and the like. This will ensure that you are able to deal with any situations that might arise in the coming days or weeks." "Our dad might be gone for weeks," said Joe, trying to hide her shock. "I find that most unlikely," replied Jack. "I mention it merely as a possibility. Yes, what is it, Bursty?" The boar was nudging Jack. When he looked down, Bursty rolled over on his back like a dog asking to have his belly rubbed. He began pawing at a golden envelope that was attached to a ribbon around his neck. "What is this?" said Jack. He loosed the knot on the ribbon and removed the golden envelope. The outside read, "To Miss Joanne Freyerson and Master Stephen Freyerson." Jack handed it to Joe, and she opened it. A note fell out of it, along with what looked like an old handkerchief. Joe read the note out loud. "My dear children, though we have not met, I have watched you from a distance as you have grown, and I am very proud to have, among my many descendants, children as decent, good, and strong as the 2 of you. Stephen, you have already met Bursty. He was a gift that I received long ago from the sons of Ivaldi. He will stay with you as long as you allow him, though once your quest is complete, I will ask for his return. Joanne, You hold in your hand Skidbladnir. It is the proudest, largest, grandest ship to sail the seas of the northern worlds. When you have need of it, unfold the piece of fabric that accompanies this letter, for it is not fabric at all, but Skidbladnir itself. When you unfold this cloth, it will unfold and grow to become a ship of the size you require. It can take you anywhere you desire within reason. Carry it with you always. Please stay safe, speak gently, and behave valiantly. I am, with love, the father of your father's father, Freyr. Why, how astonishing, said Jack. Skidbladnir and Gullinbursti are two of Freyr's most prized possessions. Both your need and his trust in you must be considerable for him to loan them to you. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but must have thought better of it. He opened his book. Off you go, enjoy your aunt's marvelous cooking. He smiled, puffed on his pipe, and began reading his book again. After a delicious breakfast, we asked Aunt Mattie if we could go outside. Yes, she said, with two conditions. Sorry, I can't remember my Aunt Mattie voice, you guys. I just got home from basketball. First, you must wear snowshoes and the clothing that I gave you. Second, you must be accompanied by Gullinbursti. We told her that we'd both be glad to do both, but we didn't have snowshoes. It never snowed this much in Freyerton. Naturally, there is no cause for concern. Aunt Mattie reached into her moss bag and produced a pair of snowshoes for Jo, one for me and one for herself, so that she could teach us how to walk in them. She also pulled out a large hooded cape for each of us. Mine was a deep shade of red, and Jo's was royal blue. Aunt Mattie stepped out of the room, and I whispered, Jo, if someone from school sees us with these on, do you think we'll get picked on? Maybe. Penny Pullman probably would, but he'd pick us on us for anything. I don't really care what people think anyway. I muttered, never mind. You're a girl. This wouldn't look too weird on you. She interrupted me. Yeah, and you're a boy. I thought you weren't supposed to care about clothes. I said, hang on a second. Not really caring if my clothes are clean or torn or whatever is one thing. Of course I don't care about that stuff, but that doesn't mean I want to go out looking like Little Red Riding Hood. She smiled. I wonder if I could wear a normal coat under mine and take it off before anybody from school sees me. Not if Gullinbursti is with us, she said. He had stayed in the kitchen to continue eating and looked at Jo happily when she mentioned him. I said, I'm beginning to wonder if he's not there to watch us more than he is to keep our spirits up, like they said last night. I'm sure so, said Jo, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it. Don't worry so much. Maybe we can stay by the house and see if Aunt Mattie will let us wear normal clothes if we go to town. I sighed. I hope so. The last thing I need is for Pullman to have another reason to make fun of me. She shrugged. He'll find a reason no matter what you do. You'll look awesome. You've got a cape, like a superhero or something. You've got to stop worrying about him. Say, listen, she dropped her voice to a whisper. Did you have any weird dreams last night? No, I said. Why, did you? Yes, I had a horrible dream. I didn't bring it up earlier because I didn't want to ruin how exciting the snow was, but bits of it must have been flashing in my head all morning. What happened? I said. Was it like the dogs from yesterday or monsters or something? No, she said. It was just a man staring at me. Just a man staring at you? What's scary about that? Well, you didn't see him. He looked like he was... She paused. He was what? I said. He was not right, she said. He looked angry and cold, but he was smiling. It was the biggest smile I've probably ever seen. It stretched way too far across his mouth. I don't know if the teeth were too big or there were too many of them or what. I'm not explaining this well. It's okay, I said. I think I can imagine it, but why was he so scary? He just looked at me. It wasn't like I could see myself in the dream looking from the outside. That's how my dreams are a lot of the time, like I'm seeing myself in a movie. This dream was different, though. It's like he was looking at me, myself, if that makes sense. I said, I don't think I understand. Like, he wasn't looking at me in the dream like he was looking at me, myself. Like he was looking out of the dream? Yes, she exclaimed. Like he was looking out of the dream at me. He had these gray eyes, and he was way too skinny. His voice was too long, and it was white, like as white as snow, or almost at least. She shuddered and said, he started breathing heavily, kind of the way a dog pants, but through his teeth. And he scrunched his nose up in kind of a snarl, and I couldn't tell if he was smiling or baring his teeth like a dog does. He held up his hands and made them into fists, and he clenched his fists so tight that his fingernails cut into his palms. Ew, I said. Yeah, it was gross. Blood started coming out of his hands where the fingernails dug in. and it dripped down his arms, and then he started laughing. That was the scariest part. He had black hair that was long in front, and he threw his head back and laughed. "That's messed up," I said. "Then what happened?" He giggled, but it sounded like he was in pain, and then he started talking. He said, "You don't know what it's like to be punished for hundreds of years when you did nothing to deserve it. The torment, the pain, the injustice of it all. Thor breaks things like the big oaf he is, and nothing happens. Heimdall makes up lies about me, but you never see him punished for slander. Yet here I am, punished like a dog," and he yelled "like a dog" really loud, "for nothing more than a practical joke." Then he giggled and yelled, "And it was funny. Balder never saw it coming." He screamed the last few words and laughed really loudly, and then pushed his hair out of his eyes with one of his bleeding hands, and he got it all over his face. Blood, I mean. I had an unpleasant feeling in my stomach. "That's weird, Joe," I said. "But does it mean anything?" she asked. I mean, is there something wrong with me for dreaming something like that? It seems so real. I've never had a dream like that before." "I don't know," I said. Let's ask one of the adults about it later." She agreed. Walking in snowshoes was a bit slow going at first, but we got used to it easily enough. Aunt Mattie was a good teacher. Moving slowly seemed to be the most important thing, with a wide walking stance coming in a close second. After a few falls, we'd both gotten the hang of it, and Aunt Mattie went back inside. Bursty was romping through the snow, eating it, rolling in it, and having a great time. He was pretty much the best babysitter ever. Aunt Mattie had given us both gloves when we went out, and they were the most unusual gloves either of us had ever seen. They were made of an ultralight, silk-like material and provided a skin-tight fit. We could barely even tell we were wearing gloves, but they kept our hands perfectly dry and warm. The possibilities of what we could do with a few feet of snow seemed endless. We spent the bright, frosty morning sliding down the hill by our house and beginning construction on a massive snow fort. We packed empty plastic boxes the size of cinder blocks of snow and laid down brick after brick to make the outer wall. We had just shifted from construction to a snowball fight when Mr. Kingsley appeared. He crested the hill at the top of the driveway and waved. We called a truce and dropped our ammunition as he walked over to say hello. "I must say," he started, "I'm impressed. You know, I've always wanted to wear one of those capes. You been cold at all today?" We shook our heads. "How about overheated? Any sweating inside your cloak and gloves?" No again. "And that's because these cloaks and gloves are magical." "Magical?" said Joe. "Yep, they keep you warm when the weather is cold, but they don't make you so warm that you overheat. I don't know how they work. I doubt that anyone does. I've only seen them a couple of times before." I lied a little and said, "I like the cape. I think that it's cool, but won't people look at us funny if we go to town?" "Many would if they saw them, but they won't. Most people will just see a regular store-bought jacket, heavy parka, or some kind of heavy jacket. People from Midgard can't see the fabric of the Vanir." "Say what?" I said. "You can see things that others can't. So can your aunt, your grandmother, and Jack. I can too, but in a more limited capacity because I have learned to see magical things, while it's a skill that you were born with." "Wait," I said. "So you mean that most people won't be able to see these capes? They'll see different clothes instead?" "That's right. People can't see things from the high north. The materials don't belong here. Anyway, people see what they want to see most of the time. Even if they see you running around in a cape, they'll just think you dress strangely. But like I said, most won't." "So they can't see the cloak or won't?" I said. "Who cares? As long as they don't see it, that's what matters," he said. "If something so wild happens that it can't be ignored, then people see it. But for the most part, people don't see magical things whether or not they can. I don't know how it works." He paused and continued. "Okay, for example, your Aunt Madeline is a Valkyrie. She's tall and graceful, and she has large wings growing from her back, right?" We nodded. "If you were to take her to town tomorrow, you could walk straight up Main Street together. People might think something like, 'I don't recognize the tall lady walking with Stephen and Joanne Freyerson.' No one would say or even think, 'Oh my, that woman has wings,' because they don't see them." Bursty snorted. Kingsley said, "Thank you, Bursty. Another great example. When the three of us look at him, we see him for what he is, a golden boar. But when most people look at him, they see a large dog." Joe said, "So no one in town sees the things that we do?" Kingsley paused. "I'm not saying that exactly," he thought for a moment. "In most cities in the United States, few people, if any at all, would see your magic clothes. Madeline's wings, etc. Phaeton, on the other hand, he trailed off, is different, said Joe, isn't it? He nodded. Yes, people who are descended from the gods, giants, and elves, and other high northerners seem to be drawn here for some reason. Because of Freyr, I said, making the connection. We think so, he confirmed. Did he create Phaeton? No. If he did, he didn't tell anyone, which isn't likely. We have a few theories about Phaeton and its connections to Freyr, but they're little more than guesses. Want to go inside and warm up? We are warm, I said flatly. Mr. Kingsley understood my deadpan expression to be an attempt at humor. He smiled slightly. Allow me to rephrase. I would like to go inside and get warm, and lunch is only a few minutes away, so the two of you probably got to go in and see if you can help your aunt. Ghoul and Bursty nudged me toward the house. I took the hint. After lunch, Jack started leading us through the woods. Touch a tree, push down a weed, move aside a bramble, take a step. It was a slow, hard way to travel, but as ways to spend the afternoon go, it was awesome. The air was crisp and cold and dry. Once we'd been walking for a few minutes, Joe told him about her dream. He was so interested that he stopped and turned to her. She told it to him like she told it to me, then repeated it. What does it mean? She said once she'd finished. He said, It could mean a few things. The first and most obvious is that you had a dream about a man with dog-like characteristics because you were frightened by a dog yesterday. But you don't believe that, I said, because it was obvious he didn't. No, he said, I don't. The second possibility is that it was simply a dream. It was Joe's turn now. You don't believe that either. He smiled slightly. That's correct. While those are the likeliest explanations based on our experience of dreams, this one is peculiar in some respects. Tell me, Joanne, what do you know about the punishment of Loki? Who? She said. He's Thor's brother, I blurted out, then corrected myself. No, he's Odin's brother. Joe said, I don't know anything about Loki except what Stephen just said. Jack said, It's possible, and perhaps it's even likely, that you caught a glimpse of Loki. Tell me again what he said about being punished. He said that he was being punished for a practical joke, something that Baldur never saw coming. And you know nothing of Loki's story. She shook her head. It's almost certain that you saw Loki then, though I can't imagine why or how. Let's not dwell too much on him right now. We need to keep a keen eye open for adventure. He stood up a little straighter and started walking again. I think that he was trying to improve the mood. But what was the practical joke? Asked Joe. She hadn't started walking yet. Jack paused and looked at her a bit grimly. Murder. Murder, she exclaimed. How is that a practical joke? It's a long and unpleasant story, he said, and we'll save it for one of your lessons. But who did he kill? I asked. Baldur, said Jack softly. Baldur the Beautiful, Loki's nephew, Odin's favorite son. Why did he kill him? I asked. Jack's face was grim. Assuming that he told Joe the truth when he said that it was a practical joke, then he did it because he thought it would be funny. Just a little farther in, Jack said a few minutes later as we tromped uphill through the woods. Up the hill, higher up. After a while he called out, Here we are, the Gatestone. I didn't have to ask what he was talking about. It was hard to miss the giant stone ahead. It wasn't in a clearing and didn't look particularly special, except for how smooth and tall it was, sort of like one of the rocks from Stonehenge. A few vines and weeds were growing on and around it. Snow covered its base. Let's see now, Jack said. He looked up toward the sky, then back down, studying the stone's largest, smoothest face. Ah, yes, here we are. He touched the stone here and there and muttered a few things, then ran his hand over an edge and muttered some more. Joe's eyes widened. She gasped, Stephen! A pair of tiny, very bright lines appeared near the top of the stone face. They shot apart from one another and left trails carved behind them. The trails shone white and cooled to a shade of teal. Soon the lights had carved out a rectangle with rounded edges. As soon as the rectangle was complete, the lights started zigzagging this way and that. Joe recognized what they were pretty quickly. Runes, she exclaimed. They look kind of like the ones on the cover of The Hobbit. As the runes appeared, Jack touched them in a sequence that seemed random. Once a row of runes ran along the inside of the curved rectangle, the lights carved out another, smaller rectangle inside it, so that the two formed a pair of lines with runes between them. Then the lights raced across the stone, drawing up from the bottom and down from the top, then zoomed around, forming more rooms here, and carving out the edge of a picture there. I watched in silence as the lights completed their picture and winked out at the same time. They carved a picture of a tree with massive limbs into the stone. The tree's roots were buried under snow. It was beautiful. Joe said, "It's weird. The carving looks ancient somehow, even though we just watched it happen." Jack said, "Yes, it is quite extraordinary, isn't it?" Neither of us said anything, and he said, "Are you ready?" We told him that we were. "Allow me a word of caution," Jack said. "The intensity of the sun is greater than it is here. You may want to close your eyes so that they have a moment to adjust. It may help you pass through the stone as well. There's no danger in it, but it is a strange sensation, and it may be less frightening that way, the first time at least. Stephen, take a hold of my arm, and Joanne, you take hold of Stephen's. All together now. Very good." Jack reached out, and with one finger he touched the Gatestone right at the heart of the tree carved into its surface. A slow ripple appeared. It spread outward like a wave on a body of thick water. I closed my eyes. "Don't be afraid," he said calmly. "Follow me." And with that, he led us through a stone straight out of the world. All right, so that's the end of chapter 7. If you guys are enjoying, just reconnect in a couple of minutes for chapter 8. I'm just going to stop it here so that I can have a break between chapters as I upload the final version. So give me just 2 minutes and I'll be right back. All right, thanks.